we keep coming back to really two cornerstones, is that business is transactional and brand is relational. And sometimes we get the cart before the horse, where the brand, people think that having awareness, having reputation, yes, you will have a brand because people will perceive your business one way or the other.
Welcome to What the Frac. We are your fractional team, and today we break down marketing trends, strategies, and tactics in 30 minutes or less so that you can do the fun stuff like be creative. Welcome, everyone, to What the Frac Live. I am Tamara. I'm joined by Nicole, my co-host.
Hi, everyone.
And today we are joined by Reilly Newman, who is a brand expert, a rebrand expert too. So we are so excited to have you on the show. Welcome, Reilly.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
I'm actually super jealous. There is a bar behind you, and
easy access.
I know your podcast that you have is usually a little sip and chat. So I brought my tea today.
Oh,
which
perfect.
is not as exciting as a sip and chat.
Perfect. I have my coffee, so we're on the same timeline.
Yeah, I think we should have scheduled this, Tamara, much later in the day so we can actually, enjoy. But we'll have to just join Reilly on his podcast there.
Yeah.
Yes. So everyone is probably wondering. So Reilly, let me give you a proper introduction. So you are the founder and brand strategist at Motif Brands. You were the author of Brandy, which is 101 Sips of Wisdom for Attaining a Successful Brand, and the podcast co-host of Brandy. You are also obsessed with human behavior and how people interact with brands. So I know this is going to be a very exciting conversation because we love branding, and rebranding is not something we talk about all that often. So I can't wait to get your perspective on it. Cool. First, tell us a little bit about why you got into branding and rebranding. Why does it excite you from that human perspective?
Really, it kind of started off with design as the foundation, where design is different than art because design is trying to communicate something. There's an objective. Art can be fun. It can be a hobby. It can just be free flowing. But when you do enter design, there's strategy, and then therefore there is psychology, because you're trying to influence, you're trying to manage a perception. And that really kind of brought me into brand and overall just strategy of going, really understanding how are people make decisions, right? In retail and B2B transactions, how do they actually land upon their decision, and how does brand involved with that? And that really, a lot of businesses get so hung up on advertising and marketing. It's like, those are great, and those are great ways to execute on a strategy, but the brand really is that compounding force, the thing that can make the advertising and marketing, really make it or break it. And I kind of just became fascinated with that, and just overall psychology and human behavior, and trying to understand, some of these fallacies and heuristics we have when we are making decisions, and brand's role in that.
Tamara, what I love about how you introduced him and what he's talking about here is that we're talking. Point one is that we literally are talking about branding in a lot of our episodes. It's been coming up very organically. And I think, once again, we're talking about authenticity and moving more human centric when we're talking about marketing. And then what Reilly's saying and what you introduced is that this idea of how people interact with brands and how human behavior is part of marketing. And just like data that we use to make decisions, human behavior, I think people forget that humans are on the other side of brands, right? And that humans are who we are selling to. And so human behavior, how we've evolved as humans, like all of that is ingrained in us and why we make decisions. And so a brand shouldn't just be like a logo or a mission statement, right? We have to think about that. And I just love that you're bringing that to the space. I guess the big question is, like, how do you start even thinking about human behavior when we're talking about a rebrand or a brand?
I would say, like, if you listen to the podcast or read the book, we keep coming back to really two cornerstones, is that business is transactional and brand is relational. And sometimes we get the cart before the horse, where the brand, people think that having awareness, having reputation, yes, you will have a brand because people will perceive your business one way or the other. They're going to do that automatically. We do that to people all the time when we see them on the street. We judge a book by its cover. And so your brand can help manage that perception, because it is the perception. and being able to go, okay, what relationally, like you said, you're engaging with the audience. The business can handle the transactional side of it. That's what it's supposed to do. But the brand is really the whole relational side. So going, how do we actually, let's say if it's a retail brand or a consumer brand of some sort, how is it actually engaging with the audience and relating to them, so then it can start building that relationship? Because then that's where it's going to get top of mind access and other benefits of being able to be their preference when they do come to making that choice. Because when you do look at most products, any other options we have when we are shopping or getting ready to buy something on a functional basis, a lot of them are the same. A lot of them do accomplish the same functional benefits. And then our brain goes into subjective mode and goes, okay, which one feels better? Which one feels right? And we are taking in signals from pricing, we're taking in signals from messaging and all these other kind of fluffier signaling options. But really the brand, if it feels right to you and you start to develop that relationship, then like you said, the engagement it's happening, but it's also it's preferred. And so they're going to lean towards that, go, no, that Nike just gets me, or Adidas just gets me, right? And there starts to be that relationship. And I think when you do think about businesses, sometimes they do think that just having the quote better product or the better service is enough, when better is completely subjective. You might think, one service is better because you have different expectations as a consumer than what I might think.
Yeah, Tamara, I'm hearing feedback loops. Which I know you love feedback loops. I'm hearing, listening to customers and listening to where they are in society, but you love feedback loops, Tamara. So is that what you're getting?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm getting that in a way, because what I'm hearing and I love is right now I feel like we're in, like people say, like there's fast fashion, right? I feel like we're in like this fast marketing phase where people just like can throw up some logos that they get, that are created off of AI or not that this is bad, but maybe using like an Upwork or a Fiverr to just like get some brand identity really quick and then throw that up and go out there and start selling. And what you're really bringing it back to is like the brand identity is actually like very human. It's very relational. It shouldn't be based on transactions. It's like who you are and this entity that you want people to interact with. And that's so much bigger and bolder and feels good, as opposed to just like, hawking goods. Right. So it makes me excited to think about working on branding again, because it goes back to values and, and it makes me want to interact with a brand. So that's exciting, but it also makes me think like it's complicated. How do you work with founders and with brands who need to do this or need to do a rebrand and get them to really focus on, hey, this is what we can boil down to. And then everything else gets a lot simpler.
Right. Right. And, I think you have two great points in there, is that referring to one of our leaders in the advertising space, Rory Sutherland, is like, this is what he talks about when you talk about alchemy and you talk about some of that charm and that magic that brand and just creativity brings to the table, is that you could do a creative decision, something that is, like you said, brand. It's challenging and complex because it's not this tangible thing that you can go, okay, this is our brand plan for the next 5 years, and you just roll it out, right? It's nothing like that, because it is squishy. It is gray area. You're dealing with psychology and perception. And so just like in the last 5 years, we've seen some brands shoot themselves in the foot with a simple marketing campaign and really destroy the brand that they've built over decades. And then you've seen other brands rise up and come out of nowhere. And you see brands like Liquid Death or something like that, that's doing something so avant-garde for its space, where it took the boldness to align with a certain lifestyle and a gap in the market. And now they've been rewarded for that. But I think to your point, it's the empathy aspect of it, is that a brand really takes in an empathetic approach of going, how is my consumer, what are they feeling right now, right? How are they approaching the market? It's not so much that they are approaching the market. That's the business side. That's supply and demand. But the desirability is what the brand is focused on. What's making someone desire my brand over option A, B, and C? And so then that makes the brand, that forces the company to actually look at going, how are we talking to the customer? How are we appealing to them? How are we addressing maybe the certain situation she's in or that he's in when they are in the market? And that plays a huge role. And if you're familiar with even like the philosophy of like the experience economy that Joe Pine wrote about in his book, that's what we're in the thick of right now, is that, like you said, you've had fast marketing where, hey, you can just blast it out, get it on Amazon and drop ship it and boom, boom, boom. And it's all this, it's transactional. It's business, but there's no brand building. Those things can come and go. They're flashes in the pan, but the brand of it is the experience. It is the perception. And that's really where that relationship is built and compounded.
You know, we've talked a lot about how marketing, a lot of times it's catching lightning in a bottle, right? And it's making sure that you are in the right space. You know, if we're trying to catch lightning in a bottle, you're in the field where there might be a storm. You're not inside your house in, sunny, Palm Springs, right? And so, but you also need that foundation. And I think that one of the things that's really interesting here is that, you can do this fast. I love that we now have branded this fast branding, fast marketing term, because there is a lot of this right now where we're talking on every single conversation, AI comes up, or drop shipping, or these quick things like Shopify. It's made it so easy to have a product and to have a business. But if you want your business to actually not hit a ceiling, to be generational, to fit into what's happening in society, because a lot of it is how are people reacting to society and how are you going to catch lightning in the bottle, you need to have that framework set up. And I think that what branding does is, or at least good branding, and the reason I'm bringing this up is because a lot of small business owners, they see it as another thing to do, another thing to invest in, that they don't have time for. And where I see the value in what you're talking about is that a really good brand sets the ground rules, sets the values, sets the pieces that you're going to use to make those decisions. So when society goes in a certain realm, when you come out with a new product, when lightning strikes, you're able to say and fall back on those pieces that are already there to make those decisions to capture that lightning. So I think that it's a piece that's very scary and overwhelming to a lot of business owners because it seems like a big piece. How would you recommend that I guess, do you agree with what I'm saying? Because I might be, totally off base here, but also how do you recommend that someone who is maybe a little skeptical, maybe doesn't have a lot of time, maybe doesn't have a big budget, would go about starting this process of really building a brand that's going to be generational and take them to the next level?
A cornerstone of brand is distinction. A lot of businesses will get hung up on being different, and different by definition will be looking at comparisons in the market and then choosing to differentiate from that. Distinction is different, where if you're distinct as a brand, you can be distinct in your strengths as a business and the value you're bringing to the market. So value creation is step number one of having a business. You have to bring value to the market or you're going to go out of business. Step number two is value capture. That's where brand marketing and these other, like advertising comes in, is that you're now capturing that value. Brand and pricing strategy and other kind of more strategic elements help with that because you're able to increase the perceived value. So to your point, getting a good framework and going, hey, we are brand X or whatever. This is how we act. This is how we do certain things. This is how we play the game. Now, when you do have a marketing campaign come up or you have an advertising opportunity, you know how to respond to that context because the concept is so clear on who you are and who you're selling to that the contextual environments, no matter what you go into, you know how to behave. And again, going back to Liquid Death or some of these very iconic brands now, you know how Liquid Death, let's say if they did an event, how they would handle that. They've done an ad campaign with Martha Stewart. You could see how they handled that and how they took her personal brand and morphed it to theirs, and it was brilliant. And now they're entering the soda scene. And so what's their approach to that? And so I think that's where a lot of businesses get they think it's this big thing and they have to, lock it in concrete, when it's like, no, just having a clear understanding of your brand and the value you're bringing to the market based off of your strengths, right? What makes you distinct, that's going to give you a whole lot of clarity and guidance for, the decisions you make, the investments. Is marketing right? Like there's so many different options to market now, and businesses think they need to be doing all of them when it's like, no, what's right for your brand? What makes sense?
I was just going to say, we talk about being able to make decisions to opportunities, but I think it also, I think a huge benefit that nobody really talks about is that it also allows you to figure out what to say no to. Because as business owners, especially small business owners, there's too many things to do. Wow, that was really bad grammar. There's too many things to do. And having a framework of like, this, I have to say no, and maybe it's not a no forever, it's a no right now because it doesn't fit into how our brand would react or who we're trying to talk to, or all of those framework allows you like permission to not do everything. I don't know. That's
perfect. We actually just did an episode that came out this week, and it's the secret sauce of In-N-Out, famous In-N-Out. And the power of no is that we kind of outlined all the things that In-N-Out has said no to, which, no to chicken, which chicken just McDonald's reported last year that chicken now has overcome their beef sales. So it's a huge market that In-N-Out has, not succumbed to. They don't do delivery. They don't do DoorDash, Uber Eats, and all of these things. It's business logic to be like, well, they're missing out on all this market opportunity, right? Is that, don't you want those sales?
Yeah.
Don't you want to sell chicken? Like, and so you look at the things that a strong brand like this that has, it said no to so many things and had that boldness, and that's only made them more iconic. It's only compounded the brand and their fan base. And so now I think every In-N-Out store pretty much does the double amount of revenue of a McDonald's store, which is crazy if you think about it. It's in they're a fraction of the size.
Wow. Yeah. There you go.
I want to ask you, because we're talking about branding, which most people think of as a one-time thing.
Yeah.
But it's not. You may need to rebrand if you're doing your job right and you're analyzing your data and you're looking at your community and you're putting yourself out there and you have the feedback loops that are giving you the data that you need in order to understand your customers and what your customers are being receptive to. You may at one point go, we need to rebrand. Mm-hmm. What is it that you see that indicates that a brand needs to rebrand?
We've done episodes on this, and we wrote about in our book. One of the main reasons to not rebrand is if you're bored. Sometimes someone will come to us and they're just, we just want a new logo. We just want a freshen thing. And it's like, okay, but what's like, why? Right. And so that's really the main point with a rebrand, is that there should be strategy at the beginning of going, hey, we need to do this because we need to pivot more in this direction. We need to skate where the puck's going for either our market or the business, or you may have a segment of your market that's dying off. Hey, we're seeing these customers not as much, or we're losing retention. So we need to start moving the brand in this direction, or perhaps the perception in that direction. We've had clients where they want to be able to charge more, raise their profitability. So then it's like, okay, we need to increase the perceived value of making it more of a luxury brand. We need to elevate it. I always just tell clients, like, it needs to come down. There has to be a strategic decision. It can't be out of boredom or, your competition, updated their logo and I need to update yours. It's just, those to me are massive red flags where you're doing knee-jerk reactions. It's reactionary. It's not responsive. And everything about brand, why I love brand, the brand is, to me, it's naturally long-term thinking. It's strategy, it's chess. And that puts you in an offensive position versus a lot of businesses, they'll end up in defensive positions where they're just trying to react and defend what they have. And it's scarce. And they're just, they're more making decisions out of fear and trying to keep up versus going, no, pause, take a breath. Now, what's a smart, strategic, offensive move we can make?
Yeah. I love that you're bringing it back to that long strategic thinking. The whole reason we started this is so that people and business owners and marketers can learn to think more strategically, more long-term, get out of that like in the weeds, we have to do this, the trends, all of that. How do you take that and think like an executive of a big corporation, right? How do we think through 3 or 5 years down the line? And I guess where I'm kind of going with this is like when a business is starting, especially a small business, a startup, any of these businesses who are really starting and maybe bootstrapping or don't have a large budget or time constraints, how would you recommend that they kind of get the ball rolling on branding? Because what I'm hearing from you is that it doesn't have to be, like you said, a big set in stone thing right now. We can kind of, as we learn our market, as we learn our audience, as we evolve, our brand is going to evolve. So if we're starting out with a bootstrapped or a small idea, with the idea that later on we're going to spend more money, more time, or energy thinking about it, how would you recommend someone kind of start now? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's a great question. And like you said, brand to me, it's a living, breathing, it should never be set in stone. That's where you get too much rigidity and the brand breaks. And the brand allows the business to evolve and change. Like you look at what Apple has been able to do, where they've gone from a product business to now they're pushing fully service business. You've had a complete business model change. They've tapped out the iPhone market. Now they're just kind of, spitting out updated models, but their services, they've been leaning into that, and the privacy, all these things that really is, okay, the next evolution of this company, but the brand has helped the business actually make that jump. But on a small scale, I would say it comes down to like really focusing on your strengths. Going, what value are we actually bringing to the market? How do we now capitalize on that? And that in of itself is going to bring out uniqueness and help you actually build a moat around the market you're serving. And I think it's like you said, it's long-term thinking, but it's this focus and clarity that you gain where you go, no, we're not going to add that to the menu, or we're not going to add this offering just because, the competition's doing that. We're going to stay focused and just keep hitting away on what we're going at because we know our audience, we know what they're wanting. Now, how do you actually, lean even further into that? And offer them perhaps maybe something that's, a tenth of the price or something that's 10 times the price, because you could have the same buyer, but they could buy in different scenarios. And so there's a lot of kind of layers to it. And I do fear that from the last 10 years, entrepreneurs and business owners have been so indoctrinated by watching the Amazons and watching these online businesses blow up where they think, oh, it's scale. It's the never-ending shelf of the online store where I can just keep adding things and one person will buy it. It's like, guys, that's great for Amazon. Like that's Amazon's game. That's not your game as a small business. That's you need to focus and provide more value, or you're going to be playing the game against people like Amazon. And that just doesn't work. You're not Amazon.
Tamara, I want to take a step back for a second. I want to do something we don't normally do here. I'm going to try this. I know this is an interview, and I know that, and you're giving such amazing nuggets about brand. And one of the things that I'm worried about is that, or at least that I've seen in the industry, working with small businesses, working with startups, working with executives, is that brand is such a big strategic piece that does not get tied necessarily to KPIs or metrics. And, in the quarterly presentation to the company about revenue, they can't point to this and say, brand brought in X amount of dollars, right? Even though it is really tied to everything. And so what I kind of want to talk a little bit about is, to a business owner, where is the ROI in brand? Like, how is that going to come back? And how can you actually take a brand that you're putting together, that you're working with an expert like Reilly here and his team to build, and how does that then work through the next level of things? So, you're building trust, you're talking to your customers, maybe you can help us here, Reilly, with that. How do you attribute brand to the bottom line and to ROI?
Yeah.
I would say
a tough one.
That is an expectation.
Not to put you on the spot.
Well, no, it's a great question, but it's also, again, going back to Rory Sutherland, he talks about how the creative department is always under pressure by the financial department, and they have to run things by the financial department, right? If they want to do a creative campaign, the financial will look at it and go, does this make sense? Is this logical? Yet it doesn't work the other way around. And so he goes, why don't some of these financial decisions have to be ran by the creative department and go, hey, is there a more creative way of doing this? Because typically creativity leads to very cost-effective solutions. He has, if you're not familiar with Rory Sutherland, he has a lot of real world examples of just being able to manipulate perception and increase value of a subway ride or anything like that. Disneyland is famous for this by how they increase the enjoyability of waiting in line. And they change your time perception of your time spent in line by making it enjoyable and actually always rounding up on the time that you're waiting. But going back to KPIs to me that's for execution. Those are metrics that you need to actually gauge with going, okay, we are spending X amount of ad dollars. We're doing these activities that can have that feedback loop. To me, with brand is long-term. It is gray area. There's so much kind of like, it's squishy and it's just not, it's not an exact output, which makes it also that much more powerful because brand is what allows you to actually do a lot of those campaigning, marketing, price increases. It allows you to do those things because it's part of a bigger strategic plan. The execution or the objectives you do along the way, those are fine and those can change, but the overall kind of like arch of the brand is what's really going to compound. I know McKinsey did do a report, it was probably 7 or 8 years ago now, where they actually did link some of the stronger brands like on the stock market and stuff with some of the higher pricing and their bigger returns. So there are some like squishy numbers, but it would be foolish to try to go, oh no, brand equals this ROI. You invest this much in brand, you're gonna get this back. And it's like, no, this isn't Google ads. Like it's much more than that. And it really, when you get down to it, it's like, if brand is relational, right? If you can follow me on that line of logic, what's your return on your relationship with your spouse? What's your return on your relationship with your child? And you spend a lot of time and money with those people. So like, what's the output, right? And if we're going to reduce everything down to this relational aspect, then that forces the company to not view each customer as a transaction, but as a lifetime value, which if you look at the direction of the economy is that's where everything's going to go. Things aren't about transactions anymore. It's about lifetime value of a customer and increasing that relationship. And the brand is really the only thing that can do that. We don't create relationships with businesses. We only create it with brands.
I mean, it's so important. It's so critical. I also know so many of the conversations that I have with small businesses or startups, when you do things like you talk about, okay, we're gonna do this campaign, and you talk about kind of, let's just say you're making up a campaign or you're going to an event, and it's like, well, why are we doing this? And you're going to say, well, we're going to create some KPIs, but this is highly brand awareness versus, like doing PR. PR is highly brand awareness versus transactional. And so when you start talking, brands, I think, always turn to, okay, I want quick hits now.
Yeah.
And so trying to get that mindset change in like how important the relationship building is for long-term value. I mean, it's hard. It's hard when people are at certain stages in their business.
Right.
So
yeah,
it's funny go ahead.
I was going to say, I like to think about when you're talking, what I thought of is the companies that come to me and they're like, we want to be like Apple. Like we want to be Apple. And I remember I do a lot of mentoring with startups, and I was at a pitch, and the guy never talked about what his marketing plan was, like how he was going to go to market. And so I, raised my hand and I was like, so what is your marketing plan for go to market? And he said, Tesla. And he was selling something, not electric cars, right? And I was like, excuse me, that's not a marketing plan. He's like, well, Tesla and Apple, they were able to like sell based on a feeling and like all the stuff. He went into the whole, the thing that marketers talk about with it. And what I like to say whenever a company comes to me and says like, we want this, we want Coca-Cola, but Starbucks is able to do it, but Amazon's able to do it. It's like, great, that's brand. right? Like that, they're able to do it because they have a relationship with their customers. They've built that brand awareness. People know what they're getting when they go to a Starbucks, when they go to a McDonald's, when they go to an Apple store, right? They know what they're getting because they've built that brand. And because of that, they're able to charge more, change their products, have bigger launches, do all these things that you want to do that you're not willing to invest in that first part of this. And so, I don't know, that's kind of where I'm thinking when you're talking about this and the relationships, is that if you want to be the next Coca-Cola and have that autonomy in your marketing strategy, you have to invest the time and energy and the trust and the brand and the experience that people are going to get from you.
Yeah. And I like that you said trust, because I've thought about a lot about trust in the interaction that we have with brands. And being able to go, okay, if there's a new brand on the market, how do we lend out that trust, right? That's going to make someone engage and reach out. And brand does play that because it's all signaling, right? It's just like we wear certain clothes or we drive a certain car because we're signaling something about ourselves. So if the brand can relate and align with someone's internal narrative and help them accomplish that that aspiration or affirm them in their personal identity, then they're going to click with it. And to your point, I would say that a lot of those brands, yes, the brand aftermath of them building that awareness and that consistency, that comes from someone already engaging with them. But before that, the positioning has to be so precise. Is that when Tesla first hit the market, yeah, it wasn't for everyone. People didn't get it. They weren't understanding. Same thing with Apple. It wasn't for everyone. It was for creatives. It was for media people. And then they got into schools and all that, right? And so you have to keep that in mind, is that brand is also the positioning in the market and framing it so that the value is there, because then that's what's going to help with those early adopters and them reaching out. Because then marketing, that's just knocking on the door of those people and raising awareness, going, hey, we're out here for people like you because we get you, right? That's what marketing is. It's just kind of nudging people so they raise their hand and go, yeah, I think I'm curious in that. Well, what is it? And if the brand's properly positioned, it's going to be that magnetic draw.
I remember, you're just making me remember, like when Apple was coming out with like their laptops, and like very early on, it was, are you an artist? Are you in media? Get a MacBook. Right. Are you an analyst? Are you in finance? PC. Get a Microsoft, whatever it's, like. Right. Yeah. If you're doing media, you've got an iPhone. If you're doing business, you've got a BlackBerry. Like it was very clear, and now the lines have blurred. But I have loved this conversation. Rebranding is so important to be thinking about all the time, especially when you're talking about communication in your branding. So I loved this. How can people learn more about you, what you're doing? How can they get in touch with you?
You could search me on LinkedIn, Reilly Newman, or you could visit our main website, motifbrands.com. Or if you want to check out the book, it's all over Amazon. You just type in Brandy and it'll come up. And same with our podcast. It's all on all platforms. And we do casual conversations over cocktails, short form, where we're just chit-chatting about brand or recent news and branding and everything. We have some fun with it.
Nicole, we're going to have to do a cocktail episode.
We're going to have to do a cocktail episode. We're also going to have to have Reilly back, because we didn't even get into personality assessments and how that works into things. So I'm down this rabbit hole, and I'm ready to have him back already. So, Reilly, you're welcome back whenever you want. But awesome. With that being said, if you are not subscribed to our channel, if you are not on our newsletter, or you're not following us on LinkedIn or any social platform that you do social on, please go subscribe. Do it. You're missing out on valuable information that you could be using to build your business. Join us every week here for What the Frac Live. And in March, we will be coming out with some new episodes, Tamara. So really excited about all of that. Join our community. We'll see you next time. Thank you again, Reilly.
Awesome. Thank you.